We are Irish Side of the Moon. Freedom of information, personal empowerment. The Irish Side of the Moon.
I still have a dream.
There are many sources of energy available.
Everything is energy. My God, do we need this war? Free our minds.
Corporations have taken over the world.
Freedom of information, personal empowerment. The Irish Side of the Moon.
Welcome to the Irish Side of the Moon. This is Tommy O'Loughlin in the hot seat tonight. This is show number 75, believe it or not. That's not too bad, by anybody's reckoning. Tonight's guest is a man called Dannion Brinkley, a South Carolinian, if that's the correct word, whose best-known quote was, "I was dead for 28 minutes." By all accounts, he wasn't a very nice young man. He was a pretty cruel young boy. He would say today that he probably suffered from ADHD and several other little issues. He managed to channel that anger and brutality by joining the Marines, and he worked for them all over the world. Now it's a matter of conjecture as to what exactly he did, it's not something that I went into in this interview because I don't think it's quite important. That's not why I was interviewing him. But in 1975, something very strange happened to him. I'll leave him to tell you over the course of the interview. I must say I enjoyed talking to this guy, so I hope you enjoy listening to our conversation. Enjoy. Dannion Brinkley, thank you very much and welcome to the Irish Side of the Moon. You're an author of 3 books, Saved by the Light, At Peace in the Light, and Secrets of the Light. But when I did my research and I looked into the bits and pieces first, I have to say you're a very funny man. I enjoyed the bit where you were doing a lecture, I think it was back in 2007, and you said, "I'm from South Carolina where everybody goes to hell," and a lady in the audience piped up and she said, "That's why I moved to North Carolina," and you said, "That is hell." I thought that was absolutely brilliant. That was lovely in the moment. But let's get back to the start, to who Dannion Brinkley was, shall we say. You were raised in South Carolina, and let's be honest, you weren't a very nice guy.
Well, I grew up in South Carolina, Tommy. Tough guy. I always felt that the way you dealt with issues is that you punched it as hard as you possibly could punch it, then you watched the reaction. Plus, growing up in South Carolina, like we said, there is so much fundamentalist religion. It's fundamentalist. Everybody goes to hell in South Carolina, and it was quite a different kind of religious perspective. And I didn't believe any of that kind of business, and I had never heard of spirituality or any of these things that are now pretty commonplace in modern day society. So you're absolutely correct. And I thought that being macho and being cynical and being skeptical and being basically a jerk was the lifestyle that I followed mostly.
And that ultimately led you into the Marines.
Hoorah, United States Marine Corps.
And how did you find that experience?
Well, I found it rather rewarding because I then found out that the more damage you did, the better you were liked, and I was quite destructive.
And that led you into eventually being basically kind of a killing machine.
Well, we all develop art forms that we follow, and I think I was quite good at that. And, if you grow up a tough guy, the more destructive you are, the more accolades you got, and I became quite destructive. And as we all know, America had a series of proxy wars going on throughout the world, so unemployment was not one of my virtues. There was always something to do somewhere in the world that further the the United States' causes. I now have lived long enough to know that most of what I was doing was not literally what I was told it was, but then I didn't have sense enough to know any difference.
Well, I think we can all be forgiven for having a certain amount of naivety about what's right and what's wrong when we're trying to follow what we believe, whom we believe are our superiors, and pointing us in the right direction. So, I imagine you've been able to forgive yourself for that.
Well, you don't ever forgive yourself. I mean, one of the most important things that comes about from the next phase, the near-death experience, is you come to realize that, I described what I call the panoramic life review. You come to realize that you're going to be every person that you ever encounter, and you're going to feel the actual what that person felt as they went through whatever you were interacting with them in. And so I don't think that forgiveness ever comes about, but a realization of the pain and the suffering that you have inflicted, you experience it. And Tommy, this was the most important part about everything that's ever happened through the 3 experiences that I've had. I've got a chance to see the changes in me because of the knowledge, and that I see that we are sincerely and completely responsible for our actions, and we are going to be every person we ever encounter, and we're going to feel the direct results of our interactions between us and every other person that we encounter in our life. And so I chose a different pathway once I had the first near-death experience, and the 2 subsequent ones, I realized I've done a lot better.
Do you still feel pain, if you know what I mean, emotional pain for having been able to see what you were allowed to see, in the sense that you were able to see? You talk about the fact that you experienced the pain that you put other people through. That must be an incredibly painful experience in itself.
Well, but it's also deservingly so. What it does, Tommy, is it teaches you that this is a fair and just universe. And as we look out through the world affairs and the events that are happening throughout the world today, sometimes that's a little difficult to accept. But by experiencing it from the standpoint and perspective that I have experienced it, I know that this is true. Sometimes you think back through, things trigger events that you think back through, and yes, I am remorseful, and yes, I'm sorry, but I am also truly responsible. I should have listened to what your inner self tells you about what is right or wrong. And I think everyone should take the time to really stop and be quiet and listen to what they're being told to do and make a determination then.
Okay. One of the things,
because half the things I did, I would not have done.
Sure. One of the things that strikes me, though, whenever we research somebody for a show, and when I came across you, and from watching one of your lectures, one of the things that the impression that I got is that you're no stereotypical evangelist. You saw what you believe you saw, and you merely want to get that across to anybody who cares to listen. Is that a fair assumption?
Absolutely. I want people not to be afraid of death, okay, because it is the number one controller. Fear is the driver in most of our lives. When you go through the experiences as I have gone through them, you discover first that you do not die. This is an event that will never happen. And second, I've never been to hell. So when you are the person that I was, you realize you don't die. You realize that you lift out of your body and you will discover a world so beautiful and so magnificent, and that you are a part of that world, and that there is this place that we have been so much taught to be, that is hell, it does not exist in any capacity as it's ever been described to us. Most of us who have heard of so-called hell don't really realize, except that it came into existence when I think Pope Clement II read Dante's Inferno, and that has been the basic concept. And if you've gone through these experiences, Tommy, like I have, then you would have to really start to study religions. And the 12 times that hell is spoken of in the Bible, it's mostly relating to a trash dump. There are only 2 times of the 12 times that I can find it being spoken of that is not in a trash pile burning. It is the lake of fire in Revelations, and one other time as a place where you really would have to face yourself. And I think that those are acceptable perspectives from the near-death experience, but I do not try to evangelize. I mean, everybody has a right to believe what they choose to believe. But if they choose to live their life based on the fear of something, you know, if you do not love me, you will burn in hell. If you do not do what I say, you will burn in hell. Based on that, I find that offensive. And I can tell you this, no one can scare me into loving them. And so I do not try to evangelize. I do not try to do that. I try to put forth the facts. The fact that I have experienced this 3 times in a 22-year period. I am 60 years old. I've been a hospice volunteer for over 35 years, and 2 weeks ago I was with my 2,000th person as they left this world. So I've been with 2,000 people in the process of watching them pass, and I've been with 431 people when they took their last breath. I won't say that I'm obsessed with death, but I have found it to be the most rewarding experience to be at the bedside and to watch the process that people go through and to see what's missing about life. And you really never understand what life is about until you're around those people who are in the process of transitioning from this world to the next.
When you say you've been with all those people in their final moments, what do you say to them? I don't want to pry you specifically, but you know what?
No, I don't mind.
Yeah.
I have no problem about it. Everyone is different. You know, we're all completely different. But it's mostly to listen. Very few of us, Tommy, are ever truly present in life because we have so many preconceived notions, so many conceptual fears that we put in place, which causes us to form opinions or create fear-based realities about what we're hearing. 78% of all families never talk about death until after it occurs, which to me is nonsense. But it's about listening. Everyone wants to find value in their life, that their life was worth living, and that they would be remembered, and the qualities of what they would be remembered for. So what I try to do is to help that person talk about their life so that they can see the good when mostly they're not looking at that. I prefer to be around veterans since I am a combat veteran myself, because war does some really strange things to the psyche. And although the government can forgive you and the priest or the minister can forgive you, there are things that occur in war that you cannot forgive yourself for. And a lot of that is to help them process through it. But end-of-life care is about listening and learning how to truly listen. So I listen. I ask basic questions, you know, what's the happiest day? What's the saddest day? What do you most want to be remembered for? But, you know, one of the best ones, Tommy, is to ask a person what is their favorite song.
Really?
And to take that person in the state that they usually find themselves in in passing, in listening to that favorite song and what happened in that event, and then to build conversations around that, because it's usually the first dance or the first kiss, or when you came home from war, or when you met your wife, or when your first child was born. And then you have a concept to help that person explore what is the happy moments in their life. And from there you can help them learn to appreciate who they are and what they did to help make this world a better place.
Brilliant, fantastic, and quite heartwarming. But I'm going to move on with the story a little bit, because in 1975 you'd been in South America, if I'm not mistaken. You came back. You had a business restoring antique cars and the like here, and you were on the phone to a friend, sitting in the bed. You heard, you could tell there was a thunderstorm in the distance. Take it from there, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, I was just sitting with my elbow on my knee. Lightning strikes the phone line. It comes down the phone line. It hits me in the side of the head. It goes down my spine. It welds the nails of the heels of my shoes to the floor, throws me in the air, suspends me in the air, slams me back down on the bed, completely paralyzed, burning, although if I was being bathed in acid, blinded. I could not move. I could not speak. I didn't know where I was. It was like being on fire. I later discovered I was dead for 28 minutes, completely paralyzed for 6 days, partially paralyzed for 7 months, and it took me 2 years to learn to walk and feed myself. And in that first 6 months of lying in a bed, because they just sent me home because they didn't know what to do, I explored a lot of different dimensions. And in those days, in 1975, you have to remember, Tommy, I had this experience before it had a name. Dr. Raymond Moody had not written his landmark book on life after life, and I had no conscious idea of what had happened to me. I had no way of understanding about these other worlds, whereas in the present, we have quantum theory, we have theoretical quantum mechanics, we have quantum physics. The multidimensional reality is now an active part of our scientific protocol. But back then, I was just a dumb hillbilly who had never heard of it and had no conscious idea.
Okay.
What happened when I was on fire is I just lifted out of my body. And the moment, and this will happen to everybody, so just get used to this going to be the last thing that occurs. And you become into a realm where you're floating above your body. You're looking at what's happening to you, but you have disassociated. It's like watching it on television. It looks real and you're involved in it, but you know you're no longer a part of it. I watched them work on me. I watched the friend come on. He heard the explosion on the phone. He came over. I watched the paramedics load me in the ambulance, and as they loaded me in the ambulance, I was so amazed at how beautiful the world really is when you don't look at it from a three-dimensional point of view. You look at it more from a quasar point of view, and how really beautiful it was raining then, how beautiful that people are, because you see the energetic fields that are around people. You know, and I had never heard of any of this kind of stuff. It was mostly bewildering to me. And then in the ambulance, I heard this series of chimes, like wind chimes, and this tunnel begins to form, and I'm pulled down this tunnel.
Wow. But, okay, so it says here that the light became brighter and brighter, and you found yourself standing in the brightest light that you've ever experienced, but it didn't hurt your eyes, and then you saw a form appearing and approaching you.
But that's what struck me as so amazing, because my eyes, there was a ball of fire that came through the room, you know, and I now know that there's usually in lightning, There are three types, and one of them is the ball of fire. It burnt my eyes so bad, Tommy, I had to wear welder's glasses for months and then sunglasses for years, and I now still have to have tinted glasses. Bright lights still hurt my eyes. But I could not imagine when I entered this tunnel and came into this bright, beautiful light, it was shimmering. It was like how sunlight glistens across a lake in the late evening or in the early morning like a mist, and it shimmered. And I'm still thinking, no one will ever realize that they're dead. It takes you a while before you accustom, because you're more alive in this afterlife state than you're ever alive in this present living state. And so I was curious, and I was observing, and I could see this mist and this beautiful light. And then up to my left-hand side, this being began to form, and it was it had features, but I was not so much interested in trying to recognize this being, because we normally don't. When you enter that state of consciousness, everything is about awareness, not about observation. I could sense the presence of this being as a safe place. You know, if I had known that I was dead at that moment, Tommy, I would have been expecting to see the devil. But since I didn't know I was, well, because I had been told I was going to hell since I was probably 5 years old.
Of course.
You know, growing up in the South, they didn't have Ritalin when I was growing up, so I was a rather, I won't say
rambunctious,
bad
shall we
child.
say? Rambunctious, is that a good word?
Yeah, that's a good word.
Yeah, because I was thinking as you were talking there, if you don't mind me saying, that even the language that you're using now is probably so far distant from the language that you would have used as a U.S. Army operative. I mean, it has obviously changed.
Not Army, Marine Corps.
Marine. I beg your pardon. What a terrible mistake.
Okay, so I'll put it. I was an evil little bastard growing up. So, and so I would have expected to see the devil, but I didn't realize I was dead. I had never heard of this state of consciousness. I had never even, and I would have never believed it. You could not have gotten me to believe any of this stuff. This was all foolishness. Anything that related to spirituality to me was something that was stupid. It was, it was.
Leave it to the hippies kind of thing.
Oh, and I was the furthest thing from one of those. You know, I was not into that.
Okay.
And I was never into flower power.
No, I kind of get that impression. All right, you've painted a pretty clear picture. So you have.
No, but people, you know what, though, Tommy, people need to understand. When I decided to start to tell the story, it was because of so much ridicule that was happening to the researchers. There were some really brilliant researchers: Raymond Moody, Bruce Grayson, Ian Stevenson, Michael Sabon, Melvin Morris, Kenneth Ring. These are true scientists. And they were really exploring this because this event that we now call the near-death experience came about because of the advancements in medicine. Cardiopulmonary resuscitation techniques advanced to the point where people can be resuscitated now, in some cases, up to 3 hours. Whereas in 1975, if you had no oxygen to your brain for 5 minutes, you were considered dead.
Yeah.
And at that time, 28 minutes was a remarkably long time, and that I was not a vegetable. You know, that I was not brain damaged. Now, I won't deny the fact that I probably have a little brain damage, but I don't think it came from the near-death experience. I think it's just all those punches I took to the head during my career as a jerk.
Yeah. Okay, moving on, back into the tunnel again. This guy comes towards you, and then there's more. There are more.
Being. It was not a guy, it was
I
a
beg your
being.
pardon. Okay, you're
Yeah,
right.
I mean,
I'm using the wrong language, and that's unfair.
No,
I
you're
do
not.
apologize.
No, you're not. If you haven't had one of these, Tommy, it's hard to construct a language. I
True.
think what made me famous, one of the things that made me famous was most of these researchers would come to me because I could understand it. You know, I took things for face value. And by the time I was 25 years old when this happened, I had seen reality in many parts of the world. And I am an observer. If you did what I did for a living, observation was a very important part of survival, almost to a point of obsession. So I am obsessive compulsive whether I'm dead or alive. I will study the situation. I will look at what's going on. And this was a being. And this being radiated this kind of sense of safety as though it was there just in case I wasn't able to handle where I was. I tell it like this, Tommy. Do you know what the difference is if you get caught doing something wrong by your father or your grandfather? If your father catches you, he's going to beat your butt. If your grandfather catches you, you're just going to have to listen to him for about 15 or 20 minutes, and at the end of the conversation, you can probably still get a dollar from him to go on about your business. Well, this being was like your grandfather. You knew you were busted, but you were safe. You knew everything was going to be okay, and this being was with me. And then I began to see my whole life pass before me in a 360-degree panorama. This will happen to every single person who is listening to me. You will see your whole life. In the Bible, it's called the Great Book of Judgment, where all things are recorded. In esoteric language, it's called the Akashic Record. It's written about. But every event in your life, you will relive it. Every single breath you've taken, you will see every event like a hologram. And then you will watch it from a second-person point of view as though you were your best friend. So you can look at the choices that you made and the options of the choices that you had. And then you will literally become every person that you ever encounter, and you will feel the direct results of your interaction between you and everyone else. And like I said earlier, this was the monumental moment in my life when I realized we are all connected. We are all connected. And whatever we're doing to someone else, we are literally doing that to ourselves. And this was a point that was so amazing to me. And then the system of judgment. We always hear we're going to be judged. Well, what was remarkable to me from coming from a fundamentalist evangelical background was the person who will judge you is you. There is no one who knows more about you than you do. And then what is the method of judgment? If divinity could not come today, and divinity sent you, in the life you just reviewed, what difference did divinity make? Or, if God, as you know, God could not come today, and God sent you, in the life you just reviewed, what difference did God make? Now, these are some pretty startling moments of revelation for a 25-year-old jerk.
To be honest,
who had just
they're
experienced
hard
his
enough.
life.
They're hard enough for this 39-year-old jerk to take in, to be honest with you, but they're interesting at
But
the
it's
same
still
time.
going to be, with Tommy, it's still going to be true, and it's still going to happen. So what people should do is, even if they don't believe this, they should attempt to give it the benefit of the doubt, and look at their life. Because I promise you this is what will happen. And now, historically, with now probably 25 million of these cases being recorded, and the latest one was from a 4-year-old kid, who I just heard about it, who was resuscitated, and he said he talked to Jesus and the angels. I never saw Jesus. And these beings didn't have wings, so I cannot relate to them as angels, because when you try to understand an angel, angel translated in Hebrew just means messengers, and there's never been an angel ever recorded. There's never been a being in the Bible ever recorded as having wings. Wings did not come about until Renaissance, and most of the stories of winged beings come from Babylonian text. And we know that the Old Testament was written during the 400-year conquest and of the Hebrews when they were captured by Nimrod, and they were not freed until Nebuchadnezzar released them after 400 years of captivity, the famed Babylonian emperor who built the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, which is now present-day Iraq.
Sure.
So they didn't have wings. So this being stayed with me through this life review. I had a chance to see what an absolutely horrible person I was. And then we began to move. We weren't walking. We flowed as though we were like I would have a feather in the wind. And we came into these crystal cities. I could see that there were many of these crystal cities. There wasn't just one. And I went into this crystal city, and I remember when I passed into the gateway or the doorway, this being, and I've never been sure about this being either merged with me or its job was done. And I moved through what I would say was a violet-colored hue, a flame, or not a violet color, and I came into this place. It was beautiful.
Okay.
It was crystal.
I'm gonna just pause there for 1 minute because I do want to continue, but the people who run this station like to stop for just a quick break at about a half-hour point. So I'm going to take a little. I'm just going to stop you if you don't mind there.
Moon. You can hear our new episodes every Monday on radiomedia.org and irishsideofthemoon.blogspot.com. You can also download episodes from iTunes, Stitcher, and many other sites. You can follow us on Twitter, you can join our Facebook group, and if you're already in the group, don't forget to invite your friends. If you have any ideas for future guests on the show, send an email to shane@theirishsideofthemoon.ie. We are Irish Side of the Moon. Freedom of information, personal empowerment.
How is your health?
Well, I lived through, after being struck by lightning twice, 2 heart surgeries and brain surgery, all from complications, I live with a series of problems. I mean, I have residual effects from going through all of this, but I would have to say that I have weathered well. I am not the healthiest person in the world, but you take things as they come.
Sure.
I mean, I have gone through 2 or 3 heart attacks, and I have severe pains and headaches, but these are all byproducts of being struck by lightning.
Sure.
I don't know, if I hadn't have been struck by lightning, I think life would have eventually led me to never coming back to this side. Something would have happened, but
sure.
As long as you're here, you have a mission. And as long as you have a mission, to the best of your ability, you achieve that.
You must work very hard.
Yeah, I do. I mean, but I have a goal.
Sure.
I have a mission, and I took this mission on because I cannot stand for people to be frightened about something that is an inevitable part of life. I can't stand for people to be afraid of something or someone use something to frighten them because it's never talked about.
Yeah, where does it come from, Dannion? Where does it come from? I mean, where did this fear of death emerge?
Religions, institutions, and governments. Religion saw it in the early times because no one ever knew what happened. Many cultures in the world accept it as a part of life, and they pass with their families, and they know they see them again. Absolutely, there are cultures who stay connected, who believe in their ancestors, who believe that those ancestors are around them. The Aborigines have probably the greatest cultural relationship with their ancestors, or those who are departed. Many of the traditional nations or tribes in the Andes have this. Many of in Mongolia and these parts of the world, they stay close to the nature of realities. And now that we understand multi-universe theory, that dimensional reality is a part, it makes it easier for me to understand how it works.
Sure.
The greatest confidence that I have gotten about the near-death experience, Tommy, has come from science, not from religion.
Yeah.
And we who grew up in the Western world with the rise of Catholicism and Protestantism and the Holy Roman Empire and the Orthodox Church, fear of damnation became such a control. I mean, you know, you either do this or you're going to hell, or you don't do this, you're going to hell. And we've developed whole cultural perspectives. I think the real context came around 325 in the Nicene, in the Edict of Nicaea, and then it became an established existence in the Western culture in the Milan, the Edicts of Milan, in roughly 348. But before then, early Christianity and Islam, I mean, they didn't have these kind of context. You know, we believed in reincarnation. There was reincarnation. There was identities and places where people dwelled that you had access to them. And then we began to formulate what would appear to become nation building, and wherever the Romans went or wherever the Ottoman Turks went, and how they developed the consciousness of condemnation, Shia law, and then our religious laws and the Ten Commandments. And we've never ever dealt with it. You either go to heaven or you go to hell.
Yeah,
based on how the church decides it. Well, what I always laughed about before I had a near-death experience, if you're going to have eternal life or eternal damnation, then you're going to be alive somewhere. Because if I'm going to be eternally damned and I'm dead, who gives a crap? You know?
That's good.
You know,
That's
I
good.
would just always just laugh.
Yeah.
Because, and then I used to think this, well, if God has an enemy, and that enemy is frightening all of us to keep us from being united with the divine, then that would be a place I would want to go. As a Marine, I would like to go to hell, because if my God has an enemy, that's where I want to be. I would rather be eternally damned trying to destroy the enemy of my God than to live safely in paradise.
Sure.
Because that's the mindset of a Marine. I mean, that's the mindset I had. I would rather wage war against the enemy of my God, which I would relate to as my mother and my father, who were probably and my wife, or who are the greatest people you could ever have in your life.
Right.
So if their enemy would be my enemy, and I would choose to engage that enemy instead of live in fear or to live in paradise.
Okay. I'm going to bring you back to the point where this being you're not sure about it merged and you were moved on to the next stage.
Well, I came into this crystal city, and within the context of this crystal city, it was amazing. And it was like it was built of glass, like glass bricks, and it had a nucleus in it. And it was like a great cathedral, like in Rome, these beautiful arches. And then these 12 beings appeared. And they are, you try to describe this shimmering creature and being, And you know what, Tommy? They were like where the words integrity and honesty and honorable and heroism and beauty and all those words we use for that we would define using like magnificence. And then a 13th being appeared to the upper right side, and it would designate one of the beings, and then all of a sudden that one being was all that I would see. It would seem to glow outward. And it would send to me like a box. I always call it the boxes of knowledge. And it was like, it was as though I was seeing an event, but it was different from the heavenly realm that I was in, because I was like reliving this event, you know, and I never did understand what that meant until I met Dr. Moody, Dr. Raymond Moody, M.D., Ph.D., and a psychiatrist who studied these near-death experiences. And it was glimpses of the future, that the probable possibilities and the potential of who and where we will evolve as a race would be. And I think I got in a lot of trouble because they prophecies and predictions, which later kept proving to be true, and what kept coming to be unfolding. And as they unfolded, I became probably more noted and more noted. But if I would have known better, I would have kept that to myself.
Why? Why?
Well, because, you know, I never started out to become a famous dead guy. I came to defend those people who were researching, who everybody thought was crazy. You know, they said, oh, that's crazy, that's an hallucination. It comes from so many different kinds of angles and different kinds of perspectives, and it's oxygen brain deprivation, and the scientific community, because it couldn't prove it, were attacking these people. And these people were not trying to prove or disprove. They were scientists who had to treat patients who had been resuscitated, who had a story that had definite commonalities within them, people who had never met each other, people who had never seen each other, or who had ever heard of this experience. Well, I had had this experience, and being the personality type that I was, and that I had gone through it, I was going to defend these people doing the research. But Dr. Moody and several of the early researchers, who I had gotten to know pretty well, because people would describe things in certain ways that the researcher didn't understand. So I would get phone calls from many of these people, and I would say, well, just tell me what they're saying. And I would explain it in my own style, which I call Southern American. I don't speak English, I speak Southern American.
And a good accent it is, sir.
And I would explain it in Southern American. And they would go back to the person, and the person would agree, yes, that's it. That's what happened. That's a better explanation. And so I became quite famous as an interpreter of people trying to find language to explain what was happening. Because there's literally no language to explain this world that we leave this one and go to the next one. Because it's dimensional.
Okay.
It's like what we call digital compression today. You not only can be anywhere at once, you can be anything that you are anywhere at once. You can be a single drop of water, or you can be the entire ocean and everything in it, and conceive of everything from a crab at the bottom to a mighty whale. And you can conceive of everything that that animal is, everything that it does, as easily as you can look at a single word. And so that's a pretty broad-reaching concept that we have of ourselves, but most of the concepts that we have of ourselves are based on religions and institutions and governments who say we're incapable of taking care of ourselves, we were born in sin, all those concepts that come about that make us feel less than we are. But if I'm a divine spark of of what I call the divine intelligence, then how could I be all those things, and how could I be such a failure as it is described? So I don't usually ascribe to that anymore, and I think people who say that are basically stupid or trying to get into your pocketbook.
Can I get back, though, for a moment to these visions of the future? Because in the course of my research, I watched a lecture given by you, and you seem to be hinting towards the fact that in the next year or so, some calamitous change is going to take place. You talked about this a lot of prophecies from various religious books seeming to be coming true, and that suggested to me some kind of apocalyptic happening in the next wee while.
Well, I think that's exciting. I mean, we are living. Let's just take it from the Mayan point of view, because the Maya, which is the 2012, which so many people are focused on, I studied the Mayans for 40 years, Tommy. December the 21st, 2012. Doesn't mean anything to the Maya. It's just the end of a 25,920-year cycle. But what it says, because the Mayan calendar is about the evolution of consciousness, it's not about time. And what it says is the Earth is the galaxy that we're in, and our particular solar system moves from the outer realm of the galaxy, which we call the Milky Way, into the inner realm of it, which is an empty space, and this cosmic energy or this cosmic flow would come, which would create many changes in our Earth. Well, we're now experiencing it. Look at how many earthquakes have happened since Japan. There's been 6 more. And these are on magnitudes between 6 and 7. China had one yesterday. Burma had 2 yesterday. Japan has aftershocks. And it's because if you study solar flares, you're going to realize that most of these things are triggered by solar flare activity. We know we can measure them because somewhere between 1958 and 1959, at a nuclear power plant at the Savannah River Nuclear Power Plant, we discovered a subatomic particle called a neutrino. And you can measure neutrino activity based on a solar flare, an explosion of a solar flare, and we know that 2012 and 13, the Earth's regular cycles of solar flares will reach its heightened point. Now,
and what's going to happen? What's going to happen to the Earth?
Well, the Earth will experience a lot of earthquakes. This is going to happen. Okay, we know that the magnetic shift, true magnetic north, has now moved 40 miles. So every airport on the Earth that uses automatic pilots are having to be recalculated. Every airport and every recalculated so that it equals, so that you can use an automatic pilot in an airport. And as these events are taking place, this is the Earth and our galaxy and our solar system doing exactly what it's doing. It's going through a 26,000-year cycle. It's called a precession through the equinox, and it moves through the constellations like it has been doing for the last probably 14 billion years, or ever how old they say the Earth is, and we are adapting to it. This electromagnetic interference, new cloud formations, Tommy, are being created because you can measure the amount of neutrinos that are gathering in the clouds. We are noticing countries and whole states, here in the States, there are floods. In India, China, there are floods. Well, these are new cloud formations, not cumulus nebulous and cumulus cirrus. They're new cloud formations because you can measure the amount of neutrino buildup in these cloud formations. We don't live in a world where these things are not measurable. It is not mysticism or mythologies. You can now measure this. These cycles can be measured because of core drillings that have happened in Antarctica, where you can drill down and see that there has been these kind of reactions. But see, I didn't know any of this, Tommy, when I saw these visions.
Yeah, but I have to get back to the question that I know the listeners to this are going to want me to be asking. Is the whole thing going to crack up and collapse? Is the whole thing going to end?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Okay.
This
I needed that. Sorry. See, I'm still a bit of a skeptic, so it's a bit of
absolutely not. Look, what you got to watch is there's two things that people are going to have to watch, and what's happened in Japan, this deal with nuclear, Chernobyl. These things have to be paid attention to. Chernobyl is now cracking. That concrete dome that they placed over Chernobyl is cracking. If water gets into this, where Chernobyl is, and those stored spent fuel rods, we are going to see a radical change on the earth. Okay, we're seeing it now. Okay, there will be many more earthquakes. Okay, one of the big ones that I'm expecting is the one at the Madrid Fault. This world is not going to end by some catastrophic event exploding. We are going through a cycle. We as human beings have made it through these cycles. We've never had nuclear radiation as a part of the cycle. But I believe without any question we will discover a way to deal with that. I have the greatest strength in humanity, especially the spiritual side of us. And I believe without any question, Tommy, we have interdimensional, and I hate to say extraterrestrial, support and help in what is coming about. I am not so sure about extraterrestrial or, aliens. I have never seen any of this stuff or any of these crafts. But I am a devout believer in interdimensional beings and interdimensional realities, that there are other dimensions that some people must call aliens. But I have seen these worlds, and I know that they exist, and some of them are far smarter than us. And when somebody daydreaming will come up with some brilliant revelation, and they'll be able to handle it or neutralize an isotope, and then we'll be okay.
Okay.
All that end of time stuff is just one more way to scare you into buying something that's necessary. My advice: make sure that you can live 6 weeks. We have done it. I mean, my wife and I, we have made sure that we have water and we have food, and we keep it so that we can make it. Well, we can go 4 months. Probably by the end of the third month, we'll be awful bored eating the same old crap. But
okay, I'm gonna cut you short there on that. Although I could listen to you for a long time, because there's a couple of questions I just have to ask. Considering what little we know about the brain, surely it's possible that what you saw might be a trick of the mind or a series of images being produced by your brain as it was trying to come to terms with what was happening to your body.
Yes. So what's the question? That was a statement. That wasn't a question, Tommy.
Well, could it not be possible that that's exactly what happened? That your brain was just going into overdrive because of the excruciating pain that you were going through, and that it synapsed all over the place, and that's what resulted in the visions that you saw?
Well, I could accept that. I could accept that at some point. But after studying this for 36 years, and studying it and talking to more than 1,000 people who have been resuscitated, and listening to all the arguments that have been put forth by scientists who, because it's, the only time that, the only difference between God and a scientist is that God never thinks he's a scientist, is that this happens at a certain point when we begin to make our transition from this world to the next. Now, I believe this, Tommy, without any question. Oxygen brain deprivation, temporal lobe seizures, frontal lobe seizures, anaphylactic shock, chemical reactions, drug reactions, depending on the situation that the person is going through. Every one of these experiences are uniquely different. I have heard people who have described near-death experiences, which I can tell you was drug-induced. I've heard people describe them based on anaphylactic shock, mostly people who have been in states of studied this. I believe that these people correspond to a lot of the scientific evidence. But I have seen deep spiritual transformation in people, lives changed dramatically, that none of these explanations could ever come anywhere near explaining. So I am not going to accept everybody who says they've had a near-death experience because of this reason. It is now a phenomena that everybody's heard about it, everybody's read about it, and when people have an experience that gives them an answer, they lump it all into near-death experience because it creates an acceptable reality and conversational perspective so people don't think they're crazy. I had this when there was never anyone ever talked about it, and I have studied and looked at it with the most brilliant scientific minds that exist in the Western Hemisphere. So for people who don't want to buy into this, I accept that. I have no problems, but I'll promise you this, I'll end up being right.
Okay.
So sooner or later, I will win the argument about the process.
Why did I not get hit by lightning? Why did I not get to see the wonderful beings? Why should I, or indeed anyone else, have to rely on the vicarious experience of someone, well, I know you now, but someone I didn't know 5 minutes ago? Why are we not allowed to see what you saw? Because surely it would make life on this world a more purposeful, happier existence. Not just for the few, but for everybody, including the poverty-stricken boy drinking dirty, disease-infested water in sub-Saharan Africa.
Well, I hope you get struck by lightning. And I hope it kills the hell out of you, okay, so that you can. But this is my point, Tommy. I would rather hear this story than tell it, because the side effects of what I go through now because of it, some days I don't think it's worth it, okay? But we should have all believed this about ourselves from the beginning. We are divine, powerful, mighty spiritual beings. We choose to come to this world, and we're chosen to come to this world. We have a talent and a task, and we come. The only way that the divine can take a rock, a stupid little rock the size of a pinprick in a galaxy that we live in with 1.1 billion planets and stars, and to make it a heaven, a Garden of Eden, to make it a heaven on earth, is through us. We have the job of being this. I am sorry that everybody doesn't have this experience and know. But I am absolutely convinced that the divine had a reason for us to block so much of our gifts and talents and powers in order to achieve the goal necessary to expand not only the universe as we know it, but the divine consciousness that is expected to be influencing what we do. We all know to be kind. We all know that the simple things that we do every day that bring happiness to us, watching our kid walk for the first time, opening the door for someone, being kind to someone, helping someone who can do nothing for us, and to walk away in that sense of feeling. I also know this. We all choose a certain parameters of the life we're going to live because we're all teachers, learners, or doers. What you just talked about, the kid drinking that dirty water, is making us appreciate that we have clean water. It makes us appreciate what we're doing, and also inspires us maybe to take care of a poverty-stricken couple or an abused child in our own neighborhood. I can't save the world, but I do Meals on Wheels. I go down to the abuse shelter. I pick up clothing. I visit with elderly. I go and shop for people. A complete different person. Why? Because I'm going to be that person. And I'm going to feel the joy and gift that I gave them. And this is the greatest gift I can give to anybody. I've been through struck by lightning twice, 2 heart surgeries, and brain surgeries from complications of something happened to me when I was 25 years old. There is no way I would be the person I am today if this had not happened. So what you do is you learn vicariously, just like you said. Why not give it a try? Because I promise you the day will come when I'll be right. We can't keep living in fear-based reality because we're allowing governments and institutions and religions to destroy the world we're living in. We're at war. We live in houses that aren't worth what we paid for them because we trusted the bankers. We're looking at religions, and we are at war with religions. We've returned to the dark ages, Tommy. That won't work. A simple explanation and a viewpoint of a near-death experience makes all of this ludicrous. Maybe I sometimes wish it had never happened to me because I see such hypocrisy and I see such failure of people we trust and put our faith in that that sometimes I have a hard time dealing with it. But you take life as it is dealt. You play the hand that you're dealt. There is nothing that anyone's going to say to me that's going to change me from being the person that I am and to keep trying to improve myself because I'm going to judge me just like you're going to judge you. And I promise, you do not want to learn the information that I know and have. You don't want to learn it the way I learned it, and I can promise you this. The events of the future, as I anticipate them coming and watching them unfold, it takes a lot of the fun out of life because you see, the most important thing is you learn is we are the cause of it. Those things that are happening and that kid drinking that dirty water is because we who are able to feed the whole world, because it does not serve us as a country or in our interest to feed that. 45,000 people are killed every month in the Congo. Why? It does not serve us. It does not give us oil or trace minerals. It does not give us rare earth minerals. It does not give us diamonds or gold or oil. And we let it happen. And for those places that we can get those strategic metals that we use, we support dictatorships. One of the things that you can watch in this sphere is look at what's happening in the Middle East. These people are throwing off tyranny. What does it do for us? It causes the cost of a liter of fuel to double. Look what you'll be paying for fuel in the next year because these people seek to throw off tyranny of what we have supported so that we can industrialize and literally destroy the atmosphere of our Earth. Think about that. We have no choice but to change. The near-death experience is one of the drivers that gives us a scientific approach, not a religious approach, to our spirituality. It is science that is driving this knowledge. And every way that a scientist has come to rationalize it has become an issue. But for those of us who've had this experience, and for those of us who've had more than one, I who have had 3, it tells you these couple of things. Number one, if I had to go through it 3 times, it means I must be one hard-headed SOB. I mean, they have to kill me every 10 or 12 years just to keep me on track. Number 2, this is a phenomena that is occurring because science is driving it, and its explanations is found scientifically. So science is going to have to reverse its ability to advance itself for this to go away, because it will become more and more dominant and more predominant because we can resuscitate people. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, so that the change, energy medicine, the fact that medicine energetically, since we now quantitatively know scientifically that we are all made of energy and there is nothing solid in the universe. This is a proven fact. The day that a pharmaceutical company is going to have to explain energetically how a medicine works as opposed to chemically how it works, a revolution in science and a revolution in self-care is going to happen. And we will quit eating garbage, and we'll start paying attention to ourselves. And we'll start looking at an energetic personality as opposed to a physical human personality. We'll look more at a spiritual personality.
I look forward to that. I have one final question for you, Dannion. For our listeners, at this point in the show, we always ask our guests to, if there was one thing that you'd like to say to the listeners or like them to do, what would it be?
First, I'd like to tell them that I love them very, very much. Because if they can feel that love, then one day I will feel that love. And second, remember, everybody, you have the opportunity to be divine. Kindness and care and concern for other people means more than anything else. And when you see your life pass before you, it is the little tiny things that you do naturally that you have no fear of or no fear of ridicule that means the most. Acts of kindness, be caring, be thoughtful, and be appreciative. And always find somebody to help. Service. Find something that you do. For me, it's hospice because I know what's next. But find a cause and put your heart and soul in that cause so that each day you know you're going to be that person that you help, whether it's at a pets, whether it's helping animals or whether it's helping children or elderly or neighbors. Find something where you see yourself having a true spiritual value. And I promise you, this universe will come to serve you. And I love each and every one of you with all my heart.
Well, that's a nice sentiment. Thank you very much.
And please go to Dannion.com.
Okay. Dannion, thank you very much. We will put all your website information up. Don't worry, and it'll all be there for any of our listeners. Don't worry, Dannion. We will put all your information up there for anybody who wants to see it. It'll all be available on our site, and I will be quoting all of the websites that can get to you, to our listeners. And I'd like to thank you very, very much for taking the time. I know you're a busy guy, and it was good to listen to you. And thank you very, very much.
And if I could ever be back on the show, and if there is anything that, if your listeners have questions, and if it's just a show about answering questions, I'll be there for you, Tommy.
Oh,
I appreciate you. Would you give your wife a big kiss?
I will.
And tell her she has excellent taste in men.
I tell her that every day. Dannion,
well,
take
tell her
care.
It's coming from me.
I will
Be
indeed.
blessed and take care, and thank you, Tommy. And thank you, Ireland, for listening.
Nice one, man. Take care. So that was Dannion. What you make of him, well, that's your own business. But I tell you, he's an interesting guy and an engaging guy, definitely. This has been the Irish Side of the Moon. Now, we'd love you to join us on Facebook. We've got lots of little bits and pieces happening there, everything from strange hums in little villages, and there's the whole idea of the 10 most puzzling ancient artifacts. We've got hemp, the great green hope. We've got a whole lot of other stuff happening there. We've got the freak of nature tree, which is interesting. And then one that I hadn't heard of before, but apparently I should have, and everybody I talked to about it says, oh yeah, I know about them, is Bilderberg. I want to find out a little bit more about them, but you should join us and see what you can find there. Last week's show, number 74, was a man called James Gilliland of Enlightened Contact with Extraterrestrial Intelligence. So check that out. You'll find that on our webpage and on our Facebook page and on our blog, and anywhere you can find it. Just type in the Irish Side of the Moon and you're sure to get a hold of something. Next week's show 76, is a gentleman by the name of Matthew Dentith. Now, he's the guy that takes a look at all conspiracy theories. Quite an interesting guy. Does a little bit of a spot in New Zealand. He's doing a thesis, as far as I know, on this whole idea. I believe quite a dry wit and an engaging guy. So, as I said, from me, Tommy O'Loughlin at the Irish Side of the Moon, it's been very nice chatting to you. Hope you enjoy the show, and all the rest of the shows too. Take care. Bye-bye.
We are Irish Side of the Moon. Freedom of information, personal empowerment. The Irish Side of the Moon.
I still have a dream.
This is just a ride. We can change it anytime we want. It's all in a choice. No effort, no work, no job, no savings of money. A choice right now between fear and love.
Freedom of information, personal empowerment. The Irish Side of the Moon.